During my time as a professional athlete, I developed a eating disorder, some severe concussions that I had sustained as an athlete. Obviously influenced my brain and my body health. And I wanted to understand what is going on in my brain. I just dove all in on the neuroscience, used a lot of my skills from my master's degree and my data science background to dig into the data. Now what I do is I break it down into these digestible little nuggets that people can use as tools and techniques to support their overall brain and body health.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, and this is Hot for Your Health. Join us for conversations on the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture as we bring you tech innovators, thought leaders, and the movers and shakers who are transforming science fiction into your new health reality. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Vonda Wright, and welcome back to another episode of Hot for Your Health, where we talk to innovators, movers and shakers, fascinating people about all kinds of topics. And today, I am reaching way back from my past to talk to Jules Vazquez. And we have known each other a very long time, and we may talk about that today. But we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about her past work. We're going to talk about her current work and some stuff you're going to see her doing. Don't kill me, Jules, because I know this is not what it is. Live long and prosper. That you're going to see her doing on Instagram that really caught my attention because she teaches neuroplasticity. So, Jules, it's great to see you again.
It is so great to see you. You know, when we reconnected over Instagram, I was just like, wow, this is such a full circle moment for us because like you said, we've known each other for a really, really long time, and I've been following your work and your book, and I'm just like, wow, this is so cool, and I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, well, I am so happy to have you, but let's do a better job introducing you than I did. So you are an expert in health informatics, in taking complex scientific algorithms and boiling it down into usable algorithms for work. But when I first met you, you were an athlete. And you went on to be a pro athlete. Connect us from University in Pittsburgh, where we met, to today, because people are going to be fascinated by what you're going to teach us.
Yes. So it is a very interesting background. It is both personally driven and academically driven. So Dr. Wright and I met back in, I don't even know, 2015 was my first year at Pitt.
Yeah.
And so a decade now, over a decade. And I played soccer for the Pitt women's soccer team. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely my life. And through that, I sustained a pretty severe shoulder injury, which Dr. Wright actually helped me recover from. She did my shoulder repair, and honestly, it is absolutely perfect ever since. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I've had no problems with it. And then after Pitt, yes, I went on to play professionally overseas in the Caribbean. It was not like a super competitive thing. It was more so just to travel, experience life, and play the sport that I loved.
Yeah.
After I decided I was done with that, I actually started to use I got my master's degree actually while I was overseas playing professionally. So I was kind of doing two things at once.
That's great.
It was pretty intense, but that just speaks to how great technology is today. The fact that I could be doing something as intense as a master's in health informatics and then be playing competitively overseas. And then after that, I came back to the States. I kind of started using my master's degree. I worked in data analytics, learned a lot about the healthcare space, a lot of the friction that is in the healthcare space. And I actually worked for, and we touched on this before we started recording, but I worked for an insurance company. And I used that as a stepping stone to get to where I am today, because I knew today is where I wanted to be, which is working for a health tech company where I take really, really complex clinical criteria and basically pare it down and codify it into algorithms to support patients in getting quicker access to care. So I use my data science, health informatics background in that now. And with that, I also have started Brain Body by Jules, which you referred to on that I share on social media. And kind of how that came out of is during my time as a professional athlete, I was just all in on my sport, super committed, would go to the extremes. And through that, I developed a eating disorder, which obviously influenced my brain and my body health. And I wanted to understand, like, what is going on? Why do I have this OCD? Why do I feel this need to perform these behaviors? What is going on in my brain? I was very aware of it, but I didn't understand it. And so at that same time, I was kind of reliving some severe concussions that I had sustained as an athlete. And I was like, I wonder if this is involved. So I just dove all in on the neuroscience. I used a lot of my skills from my master's degree and my data science background to dig into the data, to read the data, to understand these concepts. And now what I do is I break it down into these digestible little nuggets that people can use as tools and techniques to support their overall brain and body health. So that is kind of how we got to where we are today.
Oh, well, I can't wait we're going to talk about Brain Body by Jules, and I'm going to have you teach us, because part of this podcast is visual and part of it is audio. Awesome. And then you're just going to have to go watch the visual audio people. But I want to unpack a little bit what it means to take big data and make it digestible. So does that mean it's like a meta-analysis where you take, I'm making these numbers up, 32 randomized control trials and put them in a big data mining model, and it spits out the top 10 recommendations? Is that an oversimplification of what happens?
That is a very good way.
Oh!
That's a very good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yes. Pat yourself on the back. Yeah. So what we do is we kind of, like, in my professional career and what I've done in this, and like leveraging my skill set in that area is, you take a bunch of data, you kind of just lump it all in, and then essentially you run a model or an algorithm on that to extract the points that are most significant or most commonly brought up. Or because, I mean, in today's day and age, you can find almost any study and any research to support anything you're trying to say. At this point, there's that much.
It's called cherry picking.
Exactly.
It's cherry picking.
Yes. So what I do is I look at everything and I'm like, okay, these, based on everything we're looking at, these are the most significant based on what we do know. And of course, like, science is always changing and adapting. We get better data, we get more data. So I don't operate under the belief that, like, one thing is always going to be this way and it's never going to change. I think the beautiful thing about science constantly growing and emerging is we can adapt and learn and grow on the go. And that's what is beautiful about it. So I mean, you explained it perfectly. You kind of take everything, put it in, and then extract based on that what is most significant and has the most data to back it up.
I was going to say that because I'm going to use an applicable example that people who listen to me will be familiar with. So when data about midlife women's health, which virtually doesn't exist when compared to all the other data in the world, often you can find very small studies, 52 women in some place, right, with very low power, meaning not the ability to make statistical decisions. And depending on how many voices talk about that paper, it can rise to prominence. So when you are doing this analysis, do you write into your programs weight, meaning you give more weight to truly well-powered randomized controlled trials than another paper that has a very low N, very low power, so that the data are weighted, if you will?
Yeah.
Do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, a very simple way that you can think about, like, the weighting or the scoring system when we're looking at algorithms is certain indications or certain criteria are going to be more important than others. And so, you would assign them a weight. So you can kind of think of it as like an average. People use an average to summarize data all the time, but an average is not always the most comprehensive way of analyzing data, because if you have one or two marks that are like complete outliers, that's going to skew all of your
Yes,
data.
everything will shift. Yes.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, you can think about algorithms and just analysis in general as the same. But you have to understand the type of data you're working with. You have to try to codify it or quantify it in some way. And sometimes, like, depending on the quality of the data, it can be difficult to assign those values. But you can come up with a scoring system to help you identify which ones are most important and thus which ones you want to weigh your final outcome more than others.
So right now in your current role, how do people use the algorithms that you ultimately come to? Like, who are the people that use them? Because my next question is, how can non-science women or the public women that I serve, how could we figure out the data, right? Because I'm privileged to know people like you. I'm privileged to know people like the data scientist I work with, Joshua Casanet. But most people have to just get it off the internet from consensus at best, right? Or hallucinations at worst, or help the average non-data person out here. How do we navigate this?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And honestly, I think there's a huge gap in general between like super technical data sciencey people and then the average consumer who like really needs to understand and is like thriving or desiring to understand these things. I do think we need some type of technology solution there. In my professional work, what we do is we have a platform or a user interface where we try to translate that for people. So like I'm on the back end building these super complex algorithms and tools to basically pare all of that noise and nonsense down to something that is digestible and readable by the end user. But obviously that is very specific to my professional career and what I do, and not everybody has access to a platform like that. So I think in general, it would need to be some type of tech solution to take something that's super noisy and complex and unreadable and inaccessible to the majority of people and just paring it down into something that is actually usable. And that's exactly the process that I try to do with the neuroscience work that I do. So I'm taking those same concepts and trying to bring them into these accessible, low barrier to entry tools and techniques. But in terms of the data, I think it is a huge gap in general. I mean, so many gaps, really. Yeah.
Surely we're going to come up with it, though, as analytics become more accessible. But it's interesting to me how you've used this academic skill of yours to solve your own problem and now teach other people. Because I want to follow your segue into, okay, so you needed to understand your own brain. You had access to all the studies. You had a way to analyze these data. And so tell me if I'm wrong, but what I think you did was you analyzed a bunch of studies. You came out with the algorithm and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to teach people neuroplasticity, what the science says. So let's go to what is neuroplasticity?
Yes. So it is this big, fancy, inaccessible term that basically means your brain's ability to adapt, rewire, and grow. Very simply put. So when you provide the brain with a novel stimulus, and novel is key, it has to be new, your brain will say, oh, this is new. We've not experienced this before. Let's learn that thing because you might need it in the future. So if we're looking back at a biological level and we're in hunter-gatherer times and we're out walking out and we're gathering berries and our partner grabs a berry and they get sick from that berry and we've never seen that berry before. Our brain is going to go, whoa, something happened there. We haven't seen that before. They got sick from that. We don't want that to happen to us. Let's learn what that berry looks like, what it does, and let's consolidate that so we don't make that same mistake. So that is kind of what neuroplasticity is. And the beautiful thing about it is it happens all the time. We just have to give our brain a challenge, a novel stimulus, creating something called a prediction error helps as well. And it's not just for young people. Our brains can adapt and learn and grow throughout our years. There's been studies showing that people in their 90s can adapt, learn, and grow. And they see those synapses and those neurons reconnecting in the brain, which is fascinating.
Well, and I do want to get to that because, I serve 2 million midlife women whose brains go haywire, and that happened to me without estrogen. And we're always, and I see my own 86-year-old mother doing all kinds of new brain things just to keep as sharp as she is, but she continues to be brilliant. But, and I'm going to give you one more example of what you just said. I'm like, oh my God, that's what's going on. So I still dare, and I talk about it all the time now because I'm challenging people to do hard things. Part of it is because it makes you feel like a badass, but maybe that's the neuroplasticity coming along that your brain's like, I've still got it. I'm good. But so I still do a couple Spartan races a year. And I'm going to tell you for sure, I didn't know, I know now. The first time I didn't know how to climb a 30-foot net wall and swing my leg over. I didn't know how to pull up a sandbag that weighs more than me on a rope on a pulley. And I certainly didn't know how to climb over an 8-foot wall. But those were all what you're talking about, like they were new brain stimulus. And it forced my brain to figure out a different pathway. Because do you believe, I was talking to another brain scientist, do you believe that, and ritual, see how my brain does? This is how my brain does. I'm like that and that. In athletics, you being an athlete and me being a sports doctor, we develop rituals.
Yes.
Like same time every day, I'm on the field, same socks, eating the gummy worms, right? And that becomes so ritual that it takes no brain energy. It's like nothing, right? So you stop learning and getting more skilled at that unless you do something like you're suggesting. Is that how, am I applying this right?
You're spot on. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what our brains adapted to do. When we do something over and over and over again, we're ingraining that neural pathway in our brain. And we want it to require less energy so that when new novel things come up, we have the energy now to learn those things.
Yeah.
So it's like when you drive to work. Sometimes if you're like zoned out, you're like, oh, I don't even remember driving.
That's right.
Because you've done it so many times over and over, you essentially go on to autopilot. And that's both a great thing and also not a great thing if you're not giving yourself novel stimulus to then create more growth in the brain. So it's all about balance, really.
So let's quantify it before you teach us some stuff. How often, to keep our brains learning, do we need to provide it novel stimulus that is more than just, don't let the red car hit me, right, in traffic? I mean, that kind of traffic unpredictability. How often do our brains need new stimulus?
The research on this is not super, it doesn't always agree. However, I like to think about it as like we go into the gym 3-4 times a week and we train our muscles. I like to think of it on the same type of structure. I try to provide my brain very targeted and intentional stimulus 3 to 4 times a week, just like I would in the gym. So I don't have a very like research-backed clinical, like for sure this is what the data says, but I frame it in the same way as like we're in the gym working on our glutes, our quads, our hamstrings, our biceps, our chest. We need to give our brain the same type of attention because our brain and our body work in conjunction. Our brain needs the sensory inputs from our proprioceptive, visual, and vestibular systems that we train at the gym with hand-eye work, with squats. Like feeling grounded in our bodies is super important to give the right signals to our brain. And our brain also needs to be able to take those signals effectively and do something with them. So yeah, that's how I like to frame it. A couple times a week, 3 to 4 times a week. I usually try to do anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. And I love to habit stack. So I'll do it while I'm on the treadmill for my cardio and I'll work on some of my brain games. Or while I'm in the sauna and I'm sweating my heart out, I'll do some brain hand games. because we're all so busy. And if you can stack a few habits together, you're going to be a lot more likely to do it than have to set apart a separate extra set of time to do it.
And I think that is borne out in research, meaning I've read research where if you're trying to learn something, but you're doing it during physical exercise, you learn it better, right? Is that right?
Yeah. You absolutely do. Yep. And that's actually a type of dual task, which is a lot of the things that I teach as well.
Yeah.
A dual task is any type of activity where you're doing both a physical element and a cognitive element at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not claim that any of my brain games or exercises cure or treat anything. I absolutely do not claim that. However, one of the brain experts I like to follow their work is Heather Sandison, and she has found in a very small clinical trial that dual tasks, when part of a much larger protocol that includes quality sleep, quality nutrition, conversation, connection, dual tasks were also part of that protocol, and that entire protocol actually showed reversal of dementia in people with mild dementia.
That's amazing.
So the way I think about it is like, if it has the potential to be super supportive, I'm going to do it.
You're going to do it. Is that why you think when you read, and I haven't read the papers, I've just read it in pop culture, that pickleball or ballroom dancing are so good as we age because it's dual tasking? Is that what?
Yes. Yes. Dancing is a fantastic example because we're obviously physically moving our body and we're remembering choreography. What step comes next? How am I supposed to move? Do I go up or do I go down? Do I jump? Pickleball, very similarly, like there's a lot of different things going on, a lot of moving pieces. In fact, racquetball has actually been shown to be one of the most beneficial sports for overall longevity, probably because of that aspect.
Fascinating. Because it's so fast, you mean. You have the decision making is so fast.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Yep. Do you remember when you were at Pitt, that's a little off topic, but you were probably made to go through the impact test, the concussion pre-screening, right?
Yes.
So while I was at Pitt, I did this study that looked at the effect of chronic exercise on the 5 executive functions that the impact test tested. And what we found was these were all master's age people, 40 and above, up to 80 or 90. What we found in that study was with people with a chronic exercise history, meaning these were not pro athletes, but they were consistent recreational people, like 4 or 5 times a week. They preserved 3 of the 5 executive functions in their frontal cortex in a very significant way because of the physical and mental complexity of that exercise. It was such an early study. It was probably around the time that I met you. Now there's lots of brain studies that connect brain health with physical health, but probably part of that was not just the endorphins we produce or the health of our heart, but probably some of it was neuroplasticity of learning don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially like skill-based sports like pickleball or even soccer, because it's so complex, reading the defender's movement, having to make decisions on the go, and you've got a defender on your back and you've got one in front of you. Where's your open player? It's like you're so cognitively engaged, which, as you just mentioned, requires the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for a lot of our executive functions like planning, logic, decision-making, assessing the environment, and then our cerebellum, which is motor control, coordination. So a lot of skill-based sports that I think of it like sports, so physical element that are like a chess match. You have to assess where all of the moving pieces are and what your next move is going to be. Those sports are fantastic for overall brain health because you're constantly learning, adapting, and seeing new things. Even if you're playing the same sport, every individual game is so different that you're having to learn new things every time.
So I want to give some practical application. Everybody has to go look you up on Instagram because you teach people every day. But so in midlife, as I mentioned, most of my people are 35 to 65-year-old women, and we go through the cataclysmic changes that happen when estrogen walks out the door around that time. And that is a physical and chemical brain change. However, I think you can retrain your brain with or without replacing estrogen for better brain health in the long run. So have you, in your data accumulation and analysis, are there studies that look specifically at this population of women, or like everything else in medicine, no?
That's a good question. There are some studies specifically around the increased rate of Alzheimer's in women who are later in age. But to overall answer your question, compared to men, it is very, very, very minimal, and we need a lot more studies, especially on women's hormones, women's brain in general as they age. I mean, we do know that 2 out of 3 Alzheimer's cases are women, and that's largely driven by the fact that we lose estrogen as we age, and estrogen is so incredibly neuroprotective, which is one thing that also I was like, I need to get on this, because during my eating disorder, I wasn't having a cycle, so I wasn't getting estrogen, and so I was like, all right, I've got to like make up for this, and it's because estrogen is so neuroprotective. It helps keep the beta amyloid intact. It helps keep the tau proteins from tangling, which are telltale signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. But basically, to answer your question, there is some, but it's not nearly enough to fully understand the full picture and what we need to do to mitigate that fact. Obviously, we're all going to go through menopause at some point. We're going to lose our estrogen. It's inevitable. But what can we do to support our brains as best as we can? And what are the tools and techniques that are the most effective? That there's really not a whole lot on, at least nothing to make it like very meaningful yet. But what we can do is kind of extrapolate from the science that we do know and the data that we do understand. And what we do know about brains of all ages is that they do have the ability to adapt, rewire, and grow well into our 90s. So we're kind of, what I do is kind of extrapolate a lot of that science that we do understand and then apply it to kind of where the gaps are in the science.
Well, let's apply it now. So I've seen you teach a variety of things. And so if we're focused on what have you come to believe are the most important things we need to do to retrain our brains? Because I'm sure there's different categories of things you teach. So let's learn some of them. And so explain to us the concept and some examples, because then, ladies, I want you to be tagging us both on Instagram doing these exercises, demonstrating that you're building better brains.
Awesome. I love it. So in my exercises, I kind of break it into 3 separate categories. I break it into somatic work, and I'm actually getting certified in somatic therapy. And you can think of that as just like supporting your nervous system and getting you out of that fight or flight response and into your parasympathetic. And I think the sympathetic nervous system, which is your stress, your fight or flight part of your nervous system, gets a really bad rap because we're like, oh, get out of the sympathetic, get out of the sympathetic. And yes, we do want to not operate in that part of our nervous system at all times, but it also has a very important role. If we need to be able to be super focused and dialed in and stressed when we need to respond to a stimulus that requires it. But we need to have that tool and that adaptability to now shift out of that stress state into the rest and digest. We should not be in either one all the time. It's a balance and it's a spectrum. So I teach a lot about breath work as well. And then I teach a lot about visual, vestibular, and proprioceptive training. So that's the second part I teach about. And you can think of that as, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, but those are our sensory systems, or the top sensory systems that provide inputs to our brain. So visual, eye tracking, so we can do things like VORs where we focus on our thumb and move our head back and forth. That's a type of visual, as well as vestibular. Another type of visual training are something called smooth pursuits, which I share as well. That's where you're, you have a moving target, but your head stays still and just your eyes follow the target. So a few things like that. And then vestibular training. So VORs are both visual and vestibular. That's what I just demoed with my thumb. And vestibular is your It's located in your inner ear, and it's essentially responsible for balance and keeping your body awareness. So if you go on, like, I just got back from a fair. Went to a fair last weekend, and I got on this really crazy ride that whipped me around, and I got off, and my vestibular system was completely whacked.
Yes.
Because it just throws you off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can kind of think of the vestibular system as that balance located in your inner ear. And then the third part is proprioception. So our awareness of where our body is in space. So anytime we're moving our body, we're even in the gym doing squats, we're giving our brain proprioceptive inputs, which is also super important for brain health. And then the third and final thing that I teach is a lot of dual tasks. So those are like my brain hand games where I have you walking and doing things like squirt the bunny.
I can see that.
I call that squirt the bunny. So you want to do that while you're either marching in place or walking up and down on your toes. Yep.
That's not like that easy. I'm telling you right now. I'm feeling kind of like it. It's not so easy.
It's not easy. I mean, I've been doing these for a while now, so I can go really fast. But
you know, the other day I taught women to tap, tap, tap. I was working on foot speed online with Tams and Fidel.
That's awesome.
Tap, 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 heel, heel, heel. It's a brain problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like shoot the bunny. This is a brain problem, not a my hand problem. Isn't that interesting? That
it is fascinating. Yeah, because our brain wants to match up our hands. So our brain wants to do the same thing at the same time. But when and that's another part of the dual task that I teach is I'm intentionally creating a prediction error, which is when your brain expects something to happen and you're saying, no, that's not right. We want this to happen.
Yes.
It's that little moment of pause and interruption when you think like, it's like a short circuit almost. That is like gold for neuroplasticity because that is a flag to your brain of saying, whoa, we really thought she wanted to do this, but she's telling us that's not what she wanted. Let's learn what she wants. And then that's kind of the whole novel neuroplasticity thing. That's where that comes in.
Well, so what you've just said is there are at least 3 categories, maybe 4, that we can retrain our brain. You do it about 4 times a week, but you incorporate it with your physical work, the physical work plus the brain work, which seems like a good use of time. You're shooting the bunny while you're on your treadmill. What should people feel? Let's just do the dual task. And maybe you'll teach us some of the breath work is kind of hard to do here. We'll have you back at a retreat or something to teach us breath work. But what should we feel afterwards? Should we feel more mentally coordinated, or it's just over time you're able to handle? What do we feel after we do this?
Great question. I get a lot of different anecdotal evidence, and for the listener, anecdotal evidence is not necessarily research or clinically backed, but it's people saying, this is what I experienced when I did this. So it is people's own recollection of what happened. I get a lot of people coming to me saying, whoa, that was so hard. I wasn't expecting that. But afterwards, I felt way more calm and focused and less anxious. And that could be, and again, I don't claim anything. It really is just about supporting our brain and our bodies. But I have had several doctors, clinicians, OTs, PTs who have come to me saying, I've been using this with my patients and they feel a lot less anxious. And my theory behind that is because these brain hand games require so much intentional focus, which turns on our prefrontal cortex. So logic, planning, decision-making, focus, a lot of our executive functions. Our prefrontal cortex has an inverse relationship with our amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain. That's like the alarm system. So when we're hyper-focused on something, it downregulates the alarm system, the amygdala, the stress center. And so that is my theory behind why they can help so much to bring you back to the present moment. You're not having time for past ruminations or future anxieties, but you're here right now because it requires that much focus to get it right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So do you think, so when I'm about to go on stage at a huge place, thousands of people, I'm not nervous, like I'm not going out there. It's not stage fright, but there is a certain amount of heightened, It's probably like pre-game, right? You're running out of the
Yes.
tunnel, right? It's that kind
Yep.
of brain buzz going on. I wonder if I stand backstage and I do some of this stuff, it'll bring me back into the present. Because once I get on stage and I'm in the present, because when I'm speaking, I'm letting you know what's going on, people. I'm saying something out here, but where I am is actually back here thinking about what I'm going to say next, because I'm ahead of myself here as I'm delivering it here. So I get back into the non-buzzed state. But there's this portion of time where I'm a little buzzing. I wonder if this would be helpful. What do you think?
I would love for you to try it and let me know. I have used it. I have used it when I've had like big events at work where I've had to present in front of my C-suite or, you know, things like that, where I'm like, okay, let me like go in the bathroom and do a couple of these real quick.
Yeah.
And then come back out and like, okay, yeah, I'm here. Like I'm present. I'm not, because what you kind of just described when you're backstage and you're like, okay, like I'm about to do this, you're living in the future. You're already like 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. Mm-hmm. And so naturally, like that's what anxiety or stress is, or even just, and anxiety isn't always a negative thing. I think it gets tainted that way a lot, but in my eyes, anxiety is a really good, like acute response to something that you're
as long as
needing
it's
to do.
Temporary enough. To live in a constant state is horrible.
That is exactly.
Yeah, but,
so in your case, I feel like that is the perfect use of it. But if you want to kind of feel a little bit more grounded, like I think that would be a really good technique to try to use.
You know, so that's one technique. But you know, there's a lot of talk within midlife and menopause circles about living in a high not cholesterol, yes, that too, high cortisol state all the time, and being constantly inflamed by it. And so talk a little bit more about the first category of lowering breath work, and how does that even work, and entering into the balance of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic instead of living in the fight or flight every single moment.
So most of us operate in a very stressed state a lot of the day, and that's just because our biology does not match our modern environment anymore. We have evolved, and I'll touch a little bit on dopamine, but we have evolved to have a lot of upfront work for very little reward. But in our modern day, that's reversed. We have very little upfront work for a ton of reward with our social media, with drugs, with alcohol. It's around us at all times, and we get dopamine hits from that. And the reason I touched on that is because it's a very similar concept with cortisol. We used to have a lot of downtime. We used to go out and hunt and gather food and then come back to our camp and chill out. Now we're constantly on the go. We're driving to and from work. We're in traffic. We're getting a million emails at a time. We're getting all of this input from the media, from the news, all these opinions from people all the time that have access to us immediately through our phones. We did not evolve to have this much constant things badgering us. And so, cortisol is a really real problem. Constantly elevated cortisol. Cortisol in general is not good or bad. It's the constant elevation of it that, to your point, causes a lot of inflammation, and that inflammation travels to the brain and can make things not as optimal as they could be. That also brings in the point of insulin. When our cortisol is really high, we are much less insulin sensitive. So we require a lot more insulin to move glucose into our cells to do their job, and that increase in insulin causes a lot of problems with our other hormones because of the hormone hierarchy with oxytocin's at the top, which is our feel-good love hormone, which when that is super high, it downregulates cortisol. But if cortisol is disrupted, it disrupts our insulin. If insulin's disrupted, it disrupts our sex hormones, and so on. So everything's super connected. And that's just kind of to set the basis for what I'm going to say about now breath work and training your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is how we activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And there's some very promising, clear, and distinct research on how we can activate the vagus nerve. We can do it through deep breaths, especially if your exhale is extended. So say you inhale for 4 seconds, but you exhale for 7. That is a very clear and obvious way to get into the parasympathetic. Another way is you actually take both your fingers and you massage your inner ear. That is a direct link to the vagus nerve while paired with intentional breath. Humming actually vibrates the vagus nerve. So if you notice, like, my sister-in-law's mom is always so happy and she hums all day long just without even thinking about it.
I love that.
And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I wonder if that's why she's happy all the time, because she's constantly just like stimulating the vagus nerve. But those are a few simple, super simple techniques that we have access to at all times to help us feel more relaxed and grounded and regulated, that I wish more people knew and that I'm trying to teach people about.
Oh, I can't wait. Well, I think, okay, you're going to hear me say it first, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm going to hire you to come and do classes for my people at retreats. Because this is, they're used to me teaching them how to lift heavy. And now they're used to me talking about mindset and how we have to pivot our mindset if we're going to progress in the future. But they have never been taught these things, and yet I'm so fascinated by this right now, and I'm going to be humming all over the house and shooting the bunny and all those things. So I think it's for midlife women who are constantly jacked up on lack of estrogen, lack of sleep, the stress of the world, taking care of everybody, all the things. I mean, I think this can be life-saving, just critically important.
It is so important. And those are just tools and techniques that don't cost anything. Obviously, if you want to do some sauna work or some red light therapy, those are great tools too. But I really harp on things that are accessible and available right now that anybody can do at any time. Like, when I'm feeling super stressed after a meeting, I will go outside, stand in the grass with bare feet and just hum. And I immediately feel better. And it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it sounds a little like woo-woo, but and I understand why. But if you try it, like, I've had so many people tell me, like,
I am so going to try this.
Yeah, I've had so many people tell me I've done this and I finally slept 8 hours without waking up. And I'm like, I love that. And it costs you nothing. Like, there's so many tools.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, I mean, 2 things that I currently do, which sound a little woo-woo. In fact, that's the language I use, is it must be something with the vagus nerve. But when I insist in sleeping under a weighted blanket, because there's something.
Yep.
I mean, my husband teases me. He's like, it about ruined our lives. But no, I refuse to not be under this blanket. There's something about that heaviness. Yeah. And then I have a partnership with a rucking company. It's called Rucksack. And they make this, it's a weighted vest, but it's not just straps. It's like full-on shirt. That thing is so heavy. There's this calming. I would wear it. I wear it around the house just to feel calm. That has to be my vagus nerve, right?
Yeah. There is some studies to suggest that, like, weighted blankets and just feeling some pressure on your body. Obviously, nothing that's like super crushing, obviously.
No, 10 pounds.
But just a little bit of extra pressure. Yeah, absolutely. Has been shown to help you feel more calm. I mean, if you think about it, on a, like, biological level, when we were in the womb, we were wrapped up tight. We had pressure around us. So it kind of takes us back to that moment as well, which is also why a lot of people sleep better with a sound machine that gives you, like, brown noise or white noise, because in the womb, we had that fluid around us at all times. So I definitely think there's something there, and I think your instincts are right.
Well, you know what? I am going to have you come to some live event or hire you to teach my people, but if you could, on our way out, teach us 3 things, or say, here are the 3 things, maybe just what you told us, 3 things, go do it, and then reiterate for people where they're going to find more of this before I bring you back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, outside of, obviously, I would always start with sleep, nutrition, and movement. For me, those are the absolute pillars, and I know you talk about all of those a lot. So outside of those things, I would say implementing dual tasks. So some type of physical and cognitively challenging task happening at the same time. I teach my brain hand games, and I'll do another one here. So this is like hang 10 and rock on, and you switch back and forth with that one. So that one's really difficult. I like to do this while I'm walking.
I can't even do it. This
It's
takes
really hard.
surprising amount of brain power.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
this is
So
what
just
we're trying to achieve in different hands. Okay, I am so working on this.
Yep. So
Okay.
that one is a type of dual task, especially if you um, do it while you're like marching in place for
Yeah.
another physical element, or rising up and down on your toes, or going for a walk and doing it.
Yeah.
So dual tasking, or even honestly, even just walking outside and doing math problems out loud, or seeing a color, like you see a blue car and naming 3 items that are blue. So blue jeans, blueberries, and a blue bird. Those are all types of cognitively challenging things. So I would say dual tasks. I would say another one that you actually touched on earlier that I wanted to circle back to, that I'm going to start talking a lot more about, is doing hard things that you don't want to do. And the reason for that is because there's this super fascinating structure in the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which I am like diving into this right now and I love it so much. And Andrew Huberman talks a lot about it as well. But it is the part of your brain that is strengthened when you do really hard things that you don't want to do. So people that are naturally super disciplined athletes have a really big, fluffy, robust anterior cingulate cortex. People who are lazy and sit on the couch all day and get fast food delivered right to their door have a very small and diminished anterior cingulate cortex. And that part of your brain is really important for like future discipline and wanting to like achieve something down the line. Like really training that part of your brain is going to be really beneficial in getting things you want later in your life. So I would say, number 1, dual tasking.
Yes.
Number 2, doing things you don't want to do that
Hard
obviously
things.
are good for your health,
Yes.
hard things. And then number 3, I would say just the visual, vestibular, and proprioceptive training, which I already touched on before, but those 3 sensory systems are so important to give quality inputs to our brain. When I had a super severe concussion, all 3 of those systems were completely offline. I had to learn how to retrain them from scratch. And it was really difficult. And your quality of life when those systems are dysfunctional is not fun to operate in that quality of life. So I think even if you don't feel like you have problems with those systems, as you get older, you're going to see them start to diminish a little bit. So why not train them and make them more robust and secure now?
Yeah.
That's how I like to see it. And it doesn't get a ton of attention. So I would say those 3 things.
Well, I can't wait to come back. Where do you want people to go find you right now?
I am on Instagram at Brain Body by Jules, all one word. And I just love to share these practical tips. I have a lot of people reaching out. I had a pilot reach out to me today and say that he's going to start doing my brain hand games in the air when they're on cruise control instead of just staring
Instead
at
of
nothing
sitting there?
for 6 hours. Yeah. And I was like, that's amazing. And then so many teachers reaching out to me saying, I'm using this in my classroom in between classes. I'm telling the kids, like, no phones. We're doing these brain hand games and they love it. And I'm just like,
That's so good.
That like warms my heart because they're so much more focused and intentional and they're happier. And I'm like, I could be done right now and I'm happy.
Well, I love that. Well, everybody, Jules Vazquez, big data scientist, brain scientist. She's taught us many things today. I want you to go find her at Body Brain by Jules. You have a website too. That can be Googled.
I do.
Yep. And
Yep.
then I'm going to have you back because we're going to teach everybody that I serve how to build a better brain like you do.
I would love that so
Yeah.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Of course.
All right, everybody. I'll see you next time on Hot for Your Health.
Thanks for joining us on Hot for Your Health, where we bring you conversations from the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture. You can find links from today's show and connect with me at drvondawright.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Dr. Vonda Wright. See you next week.